Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this February 25th meeting of the City Council, special meeting, Highway 50 speed limit public meeting. And I'm going to go ahead and leave a clarification. Do I need to have roll call now, or just go ahead right into the hearing?
I was assuming we just go right into the public
Okay.
hearing, and then we'll do the formal meeting
Afterwards.
adjourning at the
All right.
beginning, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, then I will go ahead, and Ms. Neves has a report for us on this one. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. Welcome to the City of Placerville's public meeting. As recommended, we are holding this public meeting for the purpose of kind of evaluating the proposed speed increase. And so just kind of jumping right into it, why are we here? So per California Vehicle Code Section 22354.5, Caltrans, after the completion of an engineering and traffic survey, is legally allowed to increase the posted speed limit on a state highway. And they did, in fact, complete the necessary traffic study and recommends that the speed on Highway 50 be increased from 40 miles per hour to 50 miles per hour, as reflective from their 85th percentile speed reported in their survey. However, per Section B of that code, an affected local agency may hold a public hearing to receive comments, and those comments may be considered in the final determination with Caltrans to increase the speed on a state highway. So this is basically our opportunity to voice either support or opposition of the proposed increase. The City of Placerville is hosting that meeting just for that purpose. So the question that comes to mind for those of us who live and breathe through this corridor on Highway 50, we say, well, what's the basis for them increasing the speed on Highway 50? What's the justification? And the justification basically states that what prompted their necessity to do the survey was the amount of accidents on Highway 50. Currently, as it is right now, there's between a 3-year period, there's about a total of 102 recorded accidents and 1 fatality in a 3-year period, which is actually almost double that of a facility of this kind of character. And so based on that, they did the traffic survey and found that the 85th percentile speed was reported as being anywhere from 6 miles an hour to 23 miles an hour higher than the current speed of 40 miles an hour. And that speed differential is stated as the primary collision. When you have a mixture of speeds of slower vehicles versus speeding vehicles, it can compound an issue as far as collisions go. You end up having a lot of rear-end collisions. And so that was stated as the primary reason was the speed differential. And the memo also states that based on this information and our engineering judgment, the existing 40-mile-an-hour speed limit would be raised to 50 miles an hour. Sorry, it's a little hard to read the red in there, but just to be clear, the City of Placerville, as far as staff goes, does not support the increase of the speed on Highway 50 as is proposed. And the reason for that is, Highway 50 is more than just a highway through Placerville. It's essentially in lieu of local street for us. We actually have, it's part of a school route, a school crossing route at Canal. There is an at-grade crosswalk at Highway 50, and school-age children do absolutely use that crosswalk on a daily basis throughout the school year to attend Markham and El Dorado High School. And so increasing the speed in that particular multi-use is not recommended. Another one is that the current facility is not actually designed to handle 50 miles an hour. When the Highway 50 Ops project came through, the design was done in about 2004 through 2006, and construction was finished around 2008. It was actually designed as a 40-mile-an-hour facility, and where that comes from has to do, and I'll get into that a little bit later, but it has to do just with lengths. And physically speaking, there's not enough length in the highway to justify the multi-turn movements in those areas. But one thing that I want to bring up about the more concerning part about this consideration is that there are no improvements proposed with this speed increase. So increasing the speeds on Highway 50 does actually compound the issue and increase accident frequency and severity. And where this is coming from is if you have multi-turn locations, multi-turn points in different intersections. There's a lot going on. It's a busy, busy area. And if somebody's trying to blow through that at 50 miles an hour or more, in the case of the speed survey, about 63 miles an hour, it makes it very difficult to maneuver all those turn movements. You have left turn and right turn movements at Canal in both directions. You have left turn, right turn movements at Spring Street. You have a right on, right off at Center Street, and you have multi-turn movements on Bedford as well. So we went back to the office and looked at some of the accident reports, and we actually prepared an exhibit. There's a very large version of it on that back table back there. It'll certainly be a lot easier to see than the exhibit that's up here, but it just kind of wanted to take an opportunity to illustrate some of the highlight of that exhibit is that the bulk of the accidents are indeed at the locations and the Center Street access point, as well as some of the queuing areas as folks are entering into town in the eastbound direction and entering into town in the westbound direction. Actually, and not shown on this map too is just some queuing concerns that have happened at Mosquito Road, people coming from Tahoe on a Sunday afternoon. But also one thing that is not shown on the map is also that the Mosquito Road on off ramp is not up to standard either. So, you know, to increase the speed of folks coming through that area is certainly concerning if you're trying to get on it. If you don't have a V6 or better, you ain't gonna make it. So, but according to our traffic data, the accidents actually cluster at the signalized intersections in the areas of eastbound and westbound queuing. So some of the other concerns are just the driver psychology of it. You know, when this project was originally designed, that third west or eastbound lane was actually meant to be a loose XL decel lane, and it hasn't really played out that way. As people get frustrated when they're approaching, you know, various intersections, they get frustrated and they want to go around the traffic that they see queuing up at the signals, and they see nobody sitting in that third lane, and they think, this is my shot, I'm heading over. And, you know, I mean, I think that I can safely say that for the bulk of us that, you know, leave City Hall to come here, even on a council meeting night, you know, during rush hour traffic, it's, you know, you're putting your pedal through the floorboard if you're going to want to make it on there in order to clear somebody who's zooming up, cutting over, and getting in that third lane. So the third lane is not actually functioning as it was originally intended. It's kind of become an outlet for frustration with the congestion. So, and then also just because I'm an engineer and I love math, mathematically and directly speaking, increasing a speed actually decreases safe stopping distance. When you're increasing speed by 10 miles an hour, every 10 miles an hour, you actually have to increase your stopping distance anywhere from 75 to 100 feet. So in this case, we don't physically have you know, that available, and drivers, the reaction time, average reaction time for a driver is anywhere from 1.5 seconds to 2.3 seconds, and in an aged population it can max out at about 3 seconds. Those are precious feet that people are losing when they're responding to the fact that Highway 50 is backed up in the westbound direction as they're headed home for Tahoe with a trailer behind them. So just some things to kind of consider. So then we thought, okay, well, you know, we don't want to just come to them with a problem and just say no. We always want to look for a solution in this too. So we wanted to, you know, present some other options and suggestions that we've been seeing coming through. You know, as council's aware, we've been working with Caltrans and El Dorado County Transportation Commission on the Highway 50 hotspot study to evaluate some more permanent potential solutions for this segment of Highway 50. We've been having public meetings. There's another public meeting that's currently scheduled for April, where we will continue on the discussion with our community to figure out what kind of solutions we can look at as a permanent solution. And then the other is, you know, we've mentioned before as well that working with EDCTC and Caltrans, we're looking at the implementation of what we've kind of nicknamed Trip to Green pilot project. I think it has a little bit of a different name, but that's kind of what we've nicknamed it. And it's basically flipping all the lights on Highway 50 green for a 4-hour period during, say, Apple Hill season, and see what it does, and actually start watching the behavior of the highway when we do open it up. So, you know, that may be something that we consider in the future. And some other ideas have kind of come along too, you know. This is kind of where it starts getting into the weeds of the vehicle code and the ability to enforce. And could we put speed cameras? These are just suggestions that have come up. Could we put speed cameras? Could we do, different kinds of radar enforcement? And the thought behind that is, so people are speeding, so let's reward them with raising the speed limit. So there's that train of thought too. So anyway, that's, I'm just kind of putting all these ideas out in the middle of the table, and this is definitely our opportunity to vet some of this through. We do want to hear from the public. We actually have comment cards that are located in the very back on the table back there. And, if the folks that are here have not had an opportunity to provide their comments, please, we warmly welcome your comments. We will include them to the letter to Caltrans. And also just, we honestly are grateful for your time to come here tonight and listen to this. And so that kind of wraps that up. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Rebecca. Council, any questions for Rebecca at this point?
Mayor, could we maybe have,
Yeah.
I'd like to ask the police chief if he has some comments, and then I have a couple of comments I'd like to add to this.
Absolutely.
The council can go to discussion, so.
So I'll just add that I support and agree with all of Rebecca's findings, and that we also believe, because of the pedestrian traffic near Highway 50, that it's not safe to raise the speed limit. However, we realize that the speed survey could change that. And we have two representatives here from the California Highway Patrol Placerville office also. Council, if you have questions that I can't answer, because I am not the traffic expert, they are, they might be able to help on that too. So.
Thank you.
So just the other thing that I wanted to mention is that one of the issues that came up is that if we protest and they don't raise the speed limit, keep it at 40, can we still use radar to enforce that? And we went back and forth on that a little bit. I had a conversation today with the traffic people that sent us the survey from Caltrans, and they informed me that if we and Caltrans together agree that it should not be raised, then it can be enforced. But if we insist that they don't, and they disagree with that, and still leave it a lower speed limit, then that would jeopardize our ability to use radar to enforce. The other thing I want to point out is that City of Placerville Police, under a bill that was put through a long time ago, does do the enforcement on Highway 50, not CHP. So that's another thing to be aware of. It is our responsibility for enforcement and response on Highway 50 in the Placerville city limits. So
Is there any possibility of changing that?
changing.
To have I know
There-
the chief, maybe he wants to answer this question.
I can answer that. So I've talked briefly with the mayor. It would take a piece of legislation that we potentially could attach as a trailer bill to something that it would have to go to the legislature and get the governor's signature. And that's something we're willing to work on. But that's not going to fix this.
What are our main, what would your reasoning be to have him do
Well,
that?
that we agree, and that CHP, at least the last time I talked to Lieutenant Stover, he would like to have that back under his jurisdiction as well. And that would alleviate us from being responsible for traffic, not only enforcement, but the traffic accident investigations, which it's smoother to have them, because there's like 2 points on Highway 50 that we have to figure out when someone calls in an accident.
Right.
Did it happen between these 2 points? If it did, it's ours. And if it didn't, then it's CHP's. And it gets confusing. And we're
And
one
there's
of
a
the...
lot of paperwork, right? Because
Well,
of that?
but to be very honest, Councilmember Borelli, it's confusing to our citizens and our tourists that come through here. It would just be smoother if we could all say, all of Highway 50 is for CHP, all of the city streets are for the city of Placerville. So,
That just makes sense.
it does. We're one of the few parts of the state that has I think there's like less than 5 other parts of California that have a street like this.
So that was a specific issue that was passed by the legislature?
When they
Just-
moved the realignment of Highway 50, if I recall, whenever that was done before my time, that was the agreement, and it was codified that way, and it just hasn't been changed since.
Okay.
That's it. I was just going to ask if CHP, if you had any comments you wanted to make here on the front end, might help inform some of our questions as well. Thank you. Yes, please.
So we're gonna toe the same line that Chief Ortega is. for this issue that we agree that it probably shouldn't be raised up. The Caltrans does have the legal authority to conduct these engineering and traffic surveys, and therefore our enforcement has to follow these based on the speed trap laws in the state of California. So we can voice our opinions about it, and hopefully they're heard by Caltrans and they'll go into the survey. But we back Placerville PD in their opinion.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, I know we've jumped in. Any questions for staff at this point, council? Rebecca, I have one for now. What's the timing? I mean, should this all fall on deaf ears and Caltrans moves ahead? What are the dates for this to go into effect, the new speed limit?
I actually don't know the answer to that, but we can find out. It's usually a fairly quick turnaround. They've been coordinating with City Manager Morris as well, and the letter came in the end of November, and we were notified that we needed to, either conduct our public hearing or just kind of, accept it around January 28th, and so about a month later. So I imagine it would take at least a couple months to actually implement, and there's some signage and things that need to be obviously changed, which also, by the way, might be another opportunity for us to get, if there's not physical improvements done, at least perhaps there can be some signage done. They also have, Caltrans, when they do their highway speed limit sets, they actually have a manual that they're supposed to follow, and it's called the California Manual for Setting Speed Limits, and this is the 2019 version, and it actually states that there's a couple of policies within there where you can have an enforcement speed sign, but you can also have an advisory speed limit sign too, which basically if it's a turn that's less than the speed limit on a road, you can say, hey, caution, 35 miles an hour ahead. There's nothing to say that they don't have the ability to post it at 50 and then put in advisory signs. Hey, there's a school crossing ahead, or hey, there's multiple points of access, slow down. There's traffic signals, slow down. So there is some leeway even within their own manual for which they can consider some improvements.
Yep.
Rebecca, I have a question regarding the schools. Have they become involved with this? Have you consulted with them to see if they would have a backup to recommending that, because of the number of kids that
We have
Eldorado
not.
and Markham?
We have not. Actually, from the time that we kind of got engaged on this to the time where this public hearing was scheduled, I think it was about maybe a week.
I get it, but I'm
Yeah.
just thinking
No,
that
we
that
haven't.
might be a
Right.
a good source to
Yeah, I
have
mean,
their
certainly
backup.
we could reach out to them and see about getting also a letter in opposition of the speed increase attached to the city's letter as well. So. Oh, great. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear him.
Eldorado School District is present.
Oh, okay, so maybe he's going to talk later,
Yep.
okay.
Cleve, I saw you, did you have another comment on the time period? I thought I saw you.
No, just that they were encouraging us to let us know as soon as we completed the hearing, because they said they were going to move forward with it immediately. They didn't define what immediately was.
Well, and I'll just note for everybody that's here or that's listening, there is no representative from Caltrans here today, which is really disappointing. I think it's also actually in their manual that they would send somebody.
Yes, sir. Page 48 at the very top.
And I guess in their subsequent responses back to us, they said that they did not require having somebody here. Obviously, when you're making such a decision, it's more than disheartening. It's a little disrespectful that they would not actually just send a representative to be here. And we have a good working relationship with District 3, so it's disappointing that they don't have someone here tonight with us. So just wanted to add that into the record as well. Any good? Okay. So I'm now going to go ahead and open this up for public comment. So if you have a public comment, please come to the podium. State your name if you may. Good evening, Wendy.
Good evening, Mayor Saragosa, Placerville City Council, and staff. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight. And I'm Wendy Thomas. I'm here as a resident of Placerville and also as a candidate for District 3 Supervisor. Excellent staff report, Rebecca, just excellent. And I am here to voice my support to oppose the District 3 Department of Transportation's proposal to raise the speed limit on Highway 50 from 40 to 50 miles an hour. Traffic can be an emotional issue. We also recognize that emotion is no basis for an argument in this case. Therefore, my opposition to this speed limit increase is based on the fact that Caltrans memorandum overlooks the details and the driving conditions that are present on Highway 50, as the staff report documented. The Department of Transportation notes that there have been 102 accidents in a 3-year period. The memorandum also indicates that the primary collision factor is speeding, which has contributed to 46% of all accidents, which are rear-end collisions. My primary concern with this report is that the report states, and I quote, "This could indicate that the collisions are caused by the 6 to 23 mile per hour speed differential." The report goes on to say, and I quote, "Some drivers are driving at the approximate 85th percentile speed for the segment, while others are purposely slowing down to try to follow the posted speed limit, causing a speed differential and conflict with other vehicles." The report then concludes, and I quote, "Based on this information and our engineering judgment, the existing 40 mile per hour speed limit will be raised to 50. This report is grossly negligent, as it does not offer any other causal possibility other than a speed differential. And we all know this is a very complicated section of roadway. While the report acknowledges that Highway 50 crosses a residential and a commercial area, there is no documentation in Caltrans memorandum about the extremely challenging driving conditions. For example, going westward on Highway 50, there are 6 opportunities for right turns. Most concerning, the project diagram that Caltrans gave you that's in our staff report tonight is a straight line. It does not take into account the natural curve of the roadway or the terrain. That's huge. Staff's report took in the natural curve of the terrain. That's a critical factor. The Mosquito off-ramp and the right turn at Bedford both occur right after a blind curve on the freeway. Equally alarming, as mentioned by staff, the on-ramp at Mosquito Road is an extremely short merge lane, which once again follows a blind curve on the freeway. And talking about Center Street, the main entrance, it's the main entrance to the parking garage. It's a 45-degree turn in a very narrow lane in a midsection of the highway. There is an uncontrolled access that is allowed with a right turn lane onto the freeway, as was noted. And what my challenge is also is that Caltrans does not note that El Dorado County Fire Station number 25 is right around the corner, and that this access is used by fire trucks and safety personnel, once again merging onto the midsection of freeway. There's no mention of that in Caltrans documentation. Finally, in the speed justification report, there's no mention of the fact that El Dorado High School and Markham Middle School are there with new drivers exiting and entering the freeway and pedestrian access walking across 5 lanes of traffic. These conditions should provide enough cause to question the Department of Transportation's assumption that the statistically significant traffic collisions are the result of the speed limit being too low. I would find that perhaps they might think exactly the opposite. Certainly, this is a challenging section of freeway, and we need a comprehensive strategy to adjust it. And certainly support the Caltrans hotspot study that the City of Placerville and El Dorado County is currently underway. We need a full resolution to this challenge. Raising the speed limit 10 degrees is certainly not the answer, it doesn't seem. And their findings, I find, are grossly inadequate. So thank you so much for this public hearing.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Dennis Vanderpool, the Director of Transportation for El Dorado Union High School District. I'm one of them responsible in this county for getting school kids to and from school safely. I'd just like to echo the comments of the city earlier this evening. Rebecca, you did a great job on that. No way is El Dorado High School District in favor of increasing the speed of this section of roadway. It's hard enough to safely move ourselves and our personal vehicles east and west on this section of freeway. Get in a school bus that is not a hot rod type of vehicle and have people jetting around us like nobody's business does not make for a safe driving environment for us, the kids, or the community. So if you need anything more detailed from the high school district, please contact me in my office. Rebecca, you have my email address. We'll be glad to support the city. Thank you.
Thank you for that, and we definitely will be following up with you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Mindy Durand, and I'm a resident of Placerville. And I have been a resident of the county for 35 years and have spent all that time driving through these signal lights, sometimes having to make my way all the way down to Sacramento for employment, as many people are in this county. And we all are interested in getting to work on time. So I really object to the speed limits being raised because I do feel it's a safety factor. I have worked in risk management safety offices in 2 of our public agencies here in town. And always, always the safety concern was not simply for our employees, as now it seems Caltrans safety is for only the drivers. Our safety concerns were always preventative for the entire community. And our community includes these children, as they have been talking about. That involves, as we say, the new drivers. We always hope our teenagers are driving safely, but we know that they're not always doing that. They need a little more time. We also have another group of vulnerable drivers in this town, and that is our senior citizens. We have our senior citizens going to and from the senior center located on Spring Street, entering the freeway, driving on the freeway here. Both of these vulnerable groups need to be protected, and I agree, children are walking across at Canal Street to and from school. I currently, for my residents, have to get on this mosquito on-ramp. It is tricky at best at the current speed, and I agree it's going to be very dangerous if it were to be, the speed were to be increased by 10 miles an hour. I also am occasionally still exiting on that exit 47 mosquito. It is difficult, really takes putting your mind to it to get down to that 20-mile-an-hour exit on that curve to get out of the way of other traffic. I can't imagine what it will be like if people are pushing you at 10 miles an hour faster to make that exit safely. I appreciate hearing from Chief Ortega that there are some other communities that have something similar to this design. I don't know how similar, and I wonder if anyone is requesting surveys from them. Have they had their speeds increased as well? What has been the result? We might want to know that. Well, I thank you for listening. I am definitely opposed to this increase. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Sergosa and members of the council. Kathy Lishman. I was really pleased. At first, I had no idea that the city was actually opposed to this. I was so happy when I read Rebecca's memo with all the logic behind it, and to hear Wendy's analysis of it too. One of the things about school kids crossing the street, they could end up deciding to put a bridge over it so it would solve that problem, but it's way more, like they said, the young kids driving and school buses. And anyway, I'm a driver who believes in driving the speed limit, and for nearly 40 years I've lived on the north side of town, crossed Highway 50, driven on Highway 50. I have never seen an accident. And I'm glad that she said where they occur, but I'm curious about when they occur. What are the times that those accidents occur? About 30 years ago, my boys and I were crossing Highway 50 from Bedford into town, and we were the second car out, and a semi-truck came and luckily saw us and drove around us, went on the wrong side of Highway 50, luckily nobody was coming, and then bounced back over and went ahead. I have no idea why the person did that. He might have fallen asleep, I don't know, but you can't see far around the corner when there's cars and when there's traffic that's stopped. I know the Placerville Police Department is supposed to monitor that section of the freeway, but I never see anybody out there to deter the people, and it would be wonderful if Caltrans could help. When people don't see any law enforcement, they tend to think they don't have to pay attention. A few years ago, Caltrans wanted to increase the speed limit in Myers, and the public was outraged, and Caltrans, the CHP helped in that situation. In Myers, there's only one signal. And the speed limit's still 40. They raised it from 35 to 40. But coming down the hill from Highway 50, coming into Myers, cars tended to go really fast, and now the roundabout slows them down, and I heard they're putting another roundabout, the county, at the intersection of Highway 50 and Pioneer Trail, where the signal currently is. So their speed limit is 40, and it's a good example for us. Why shouldn't ours stay 40? At one time on Highway 49 coming into town, Caltrans wanted to raise the speed limit to 35 all the way to the freeway. Well, they changed it to 35, but it turns to 30. So they listened, and I don't want them to say, okay, 50, we'll give you 45 instead. That's not the compromise. As I drive into town on Highway 50 heading east, I am shocked, always, that the speed limit sign says 65 and then the next one says 40. And I always know, and I try to slow down so that I can be 40, and I have to get in the left lane because I have to turn off to go to the north side of town. I don't know why they can't say sooner on, slow to 60 or slow to 55. Why it has to be from 65 to 40, that's not good. People have a hard time paying attention to that. They need to slow the traffic down gradually as it comes into town by posting different speed limits. They do that all along Highway 88 and 49 going up to Jackson. I don't know why they can't do that here.
Thank you, Kathy. Anybody else? Good evening, Sue.
Good evening, Sue Rodman, Placerville resident, been here since 1989. Have referred to those stoplights as the 3 fatal stoplights of Placerville for a long time. An interesting TV ad says, people want to know how fast their car can go from 0 to 60. But wouldn't you rather know how fast it can go from 60 to 0? And then you see the little turtle walk across the road in front of the car. I think this question is especially relevant for the section of US 50 through Placerville. Stopping distances include the thinking distance traveled while the driver notices a hazard and applies the brakes, and the vehicle's braking distance until it comes to a full stop. So the official estimates of stopping distances are these. At 30 miles per hour, it's 75 feet or 3 car lengths. Doesn't sound too bad. 40 miles an hour, that increases to 118 feet or 9 car lengths. 50 miles an hour, we're at 175 feet and 13 car lengths. That's quite a distance in the city of Placerville. And at 60 miles an hour, where some people are definitely going, it's 240 feet or 18 car lengths. And for the crazy speed demons at 70 miles an hour, it's 315 feet, about 3 football fields or 24 car lengths. And those distances are based on a best case reaction time of only 2/3 of a second. Less than a second. Which assumes that your driver is alert, concentrating, not impaired, driving when tired or impaired or distracted significantly increases reaction times. So those thinking distances are minimums. The braking distance depends on how fast the vehicle was traveling before the brakes were applied and is proportional to the square of the initial speed. That means even small increases in speed means significantly longer braking distances. Braking distances are much longer for larger, heavier vehicles, trucks, hauling trailers, etc., and in wet or icy conditions. So again, those distances that I just read to you are a minimum. Technologies such as anti-lock brace and stability control are designed to enable greater control over the vehicle. It doesn't shorten the stopping distance. There's not enough reduction in braking distance to significantly affect your overall stopping distance for any of the new technology for braking. Whatever technology a vehicle has, the basic fact remains that the faster you drive, the longer your stopping distance, and therefore the less chance you have of stopping in time in an emergency. With accident rates on Highway 50 at approximately double what you would expect for this section of road, why, oh why, would you increase the speed limit, which would increase the stopping distances in this congested stretch of highway? This is especially counterintuitive when one of the major causes for the accidents here is cited as speeding. Hello. A more responsible course of action would be to reduce the speed limit to 30 miles an hour, certainly not increase it to 50 miles an hour. Please rethink this course of action and do not increase the speed to 50 in Placerville. Who do we turn these into?
Thank you, Sue.
Mayor, councilors, city staff, thank you for this meeting. Patty Farrington, Placerville. I applaud you all for being against this. I can't think of a stupider idea, honestly. It needs to be apples to apples. What Wendy was saying, that their model showed a straightaway, and that was part of the reason for allowing it to be increased by 10 miles an hour. So I'd like to ask Caltrans when they plan to straighten the road to make it feasible. Thanks.
Thank you. Good evening.
Council members, Mr. Mayor, Barry Batchelor from Smith Flat. When I read the article in the Mountain Democrat about this increase in the speed limit, I decided that I would do a little study. And I purposely drove down through the signals twice a day in both directions, starting on February 17th. And one thing I noted at the morning, I would go at about 8 o'clock in the morning, there was a tremendous amount of heavy equipment, 18-wheelers and everything you can think of going up the hill. And the cars are kind of skirting around them. There's a lot of heavy traffic. But in the 7 days or 6 days, I had 12 times that I went to the west and 12 times to the east. 6 of them, I hit 2 lights, had to stop for them. And 4 times, I hit only 1 light. And out of the 12, I had 2 times where I was able to go through all 3 lights without having to stop. And usually at Spring Street, you sit there on 2 cycles. You don't clear out because they back up all the way to Bedford. Going eastbound on 12 times, I had 2 lights that I had to stop at 2 different times. 6 times I had 1 light, and 4 times I had no lights. For some reason, it seems the traffic flows a little bit better to the east than to the west. I don't know. But if you come down Highway 50, you come around from Mosquito, you're going to see lots of skid marks. And if you increase it to 50, you're going to be a lot of blue or red paint marks that the police department will be marking around collisions. So, you know, it's a major hassle. And then with these kids going across the intersections, that doubles it. So anyway, it was quite interesting to take a little study and figure out, you know, if you increase it to 50, you know, it's just like getting an enema. You're going to go in a hurry, but you still got to sit there. Thank you.
Thank you. You're going to have to top that.
How do you follow that one? Hi there. My name's Ken Greenwood. I've never been to the city council, so this is new and different for me. Usually I'm at the board of supervisors, hopefully educating them. Sadly, they're not here. I'm glad our candidate is, but I also was at a hearing today at 2 o'clock at the board of supervisors, and then I thought, gosh, where's this hearing, or where's this meeting, and where's what time is it? And so I went into the board office and asked, and they go, not our job. So that's sad. And I think I did kind of expect to see Brian here, but sadly he's not. Anyway, bottom line is, yeah, not my job. How stupid is that? Stupid has come up a couple of times here, hasn't it? I'm going to add to that 5 times over, because this is just ridiculously stupid. This is insanely stupid. This is just wrongfully, and she said negligently, stupid. So I must agree. Anyway, my background, 30 years resident in the county, been driving through these lights that whole time. Used to work at the county for 14 years as land use planner. Been retired now, and but anyway, both my kids went to El Dorado High School, and they were always afraid. I remember them always mentioning that they were afraid of those intersections. And I go, why is that? And they go, people are going too stupid fast. Get it in there. Anyway, again, this is stupid beyond comprehension, and I really can't believe this. Oh, and I've also been driving it back and forth since 1972 when I got my license. I'm a skier. Used to work at Kirkwood too. Now I work at Heavenly. Anyway, people are in a hurry to get to wonderful places. I get it. But you can't get there if you don't get there. And I just can't imagine why Caltrans is doing this except for complaints from the urbanites and maybe even from the other people up there where all the money goes to. Anyway, is Assemblyman Bigelow and Senator Daly in on this? Have we contacted their office? Because I will. And because I know Brian, I like to say I helped him get elected. But anyway, from a planning standpoint, this is stupid. From a parent's viewpoint, this is stupid. And now I guess I'm a senior citizen because I'll be 65 in June, so it's stupid there. I've always been afraid of driving through town, quite honestly, because of all the stupid opportunities that are out there. If nothing else, let's get a radar sign out there. You're going too fast. We see them all the time. Maybe we can get one. I don't know what the story is here. Also, Caltrans, where the stupid are you tonight? Sadly, we don't once again believe it. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. And resoundingly stupid, no.
Thank you. Any further comments? Yes. We have.
I wanted to know if I
evening. My name's Arnie Johnson, citizen of Placerville for 30 years, also a teacher. I heard a couple things. So being that you have legal counsel, I guess my question would be, have you looked at filing an injunction or some type of legal action to stop this from happening? Question, because they're not following their manual, their own procedures. Turning on Highway 50, if they do push this through, according to their letter, oh, they'll listen to us. And to me, it sounds like they're going to do whatever they want to do. If they do this, the reality is anybody turning on Highway 50 on a red light, that should be changed. It's already dangerous enough as it is now. By increasing it to 50, trying to turn on a Highway 50 on a red light, somebody's gonna get killed. And it's gonna be on them by doing this. It is stupid to increase the speed limit when there are so many accidents already. It's just gonna create more, and it's gonna cause somebody to die. And it's a shame that it will come down to that. Somebody dying because not putting enough foresight into it. It's not a straight road. We've all drove this highway. I lived in Pollock Pines for 20 years. You drop down to 40, you slow down to 40 because when you come around the corner, you know it might be stopped. We know that. They don't know that. Going at 50 miles an hour, you will not be able to stop. So yes, it is a stupid idea.
Thank you. No, I'm sorry. I let everyone speak over on this one, so no twosies, sorry.
Mayor, if I may make a couple of clarifications.
Yes.
If public comment is closed. Sorry.
Of course.
I just wanted to actually kind of reiterate the variance to their own design manual. It's written in my report, but I didn't really cover it in depth on the presentation. You know, the acceleration lengths required for 40 mile an hour zone is 315 feet. That's for deceleration and acceleration. And for 50 miles an hour, it's 435 feet. That's per table 405.2B of the Highway Design Manual, which is Caltrans's, for lack of a better description, design Bible. That we don't actually even have physically the space between the intersection of Canal and Spring Street to accommodate 50 miles an hour. The manual that they use for citing the speed, Cleve and I went through it today, and there are several areas where they're not following their own manual. So these are some things that we directly need to discuss with Caltrans, because if this is the rule book and they're not playing by it, then how do we proceed? So that was just a couple. Oh, and one more clarification. To the police department's defense, every time I'm coming into work, I certainly absolutely see an SUV sitting right there because I slow down. And they do a great job, and I wave at them and they wave back, and they are absolutely present on Highway 50 for enforcement. So thank you, Chief.
Question, Rebecca. Is this a case of Caltrans bureaucracy being so large that there isn't people in this particular unit talking to our District 3 people? Like it just seems odd to me that nobody would show up tonight and that we wouldn't have had discussions either at EDCTC or at SACOG or somewhere where we run into these folks all the time. I'm not trying to make an excuse for them, but I'm just trying to get a better sense of our interactions with their staff on this particular issue.
So they kind of have, from what I've seen when things move through Caltrans, is there's essentially, for lack of a better description, a checklist. And, did you send this to CHP? Yes. Well, they probably sent it to CHP at headquarters, and they probably didn't talk to Lieutenant Stover or to, Officer Brown. These are folks that live and breathe here, and they have the experience. And so having, CHP being a consultation on this for locally would have been very helpful, but it sounds like they weren't even contacted locally. And then furthermore, beyond that, if the enforcement of it is delegated to Placerville Police Department, then perhaps Placerville Police Department should have been the in lieu of respondent for that, and they weren't contacted either. And, you know, as far as the individual that sent the letter, I think that they're just kind of, they have like a checklist, and they're just kind of, this is a canned letter is what it looked like a little bit. I will say that they're several levels below the folks that we normally deal with at Caltrans District 3. And so, you know, I don't doubt that this will be the end of the conversation with District 3. We do have a good working relationship with them.
Right. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
If I can ask the city engineer a question. One of the big mysteries for this was I was in the city manager's office when he showed me the letter that Caltrans had sent to him, and that was the very first anybody in Placerville had heard what Caltrans engineering was up to. So my question is this: what prompted this study? Do you have any idea on that? And do you have any idea what area they were tasked to study?
So given that the letter came from essentially the traffic safety branch, you know, when they start getting accident reports, they start doing the, okay, well, what's going on in these areas? And kind of the go-to response would be, okay, well, let's conduct an engineering and traffic survey. And then they kind of drew a conclusion based on the summation of that, you know, again, to kind of support some of the comments made here tonight. The highway is not straight through Placerville. It seems like it at first, but it really is not. And so, you know, as far as what prompted them, I think it was the collisions.
And they didn't come to the conclusion that they had a substandard roadway, and that was what was leading to, or contributing factor.
That was not outlined in their engineering judgment.
Thank you. Yes.
City manager.
I just want to add to that. I also want to note that these speed surveys have a life and they expire over a period of time. And I suspect, based on the language that was in the letter, something I read, it talked about it expiring. It didn't say that this one had expired, but it did talk about that they do expire, and so they're required to refresh those periodically. So I think that may be another factor that came into play here.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff or comments? All right. Kara?
Yeah, I've got a comment. First, thank you, Rebecca, for a very thorough report, and for staff for really jumping on this. And thank you to all the members of the public that came out to voice their concerns about this, because it is a really important issue for our community. You know, on one hand, I can understand the speed differential argument from Caltrans, but you're really not comparing people driving at 60 miles an hour with people driving the speed limit at 40. You're really comparing people that are at a standstill at a red light and people driving 60 miles an hour. And it seems, I mean, it's just really shocking that details like that were left out of their report. So I'm really hopeful that we can talk to the powers that be at Caltrans and have some positive movement on this, but fingers crossed. So.
Thank you, Kara. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I don't know if this verbiage is correct or not, but I would say that based on, you know, just our own simple observations of living in this community, that they were grossly negligent in their assessment of our community and how it impacts the drivers, the streets. You know, there was a lot of valid complaints or concerns that were raised that, from what I understand, were not raised in this assessment. You know, they took a straight line and took their calculations like they do with their cameras and measurements, and came up with a solution that fit some theory that they have and not our community. And I go back to the gross negligence and not doing their due diligence to be here in our community and understand our community before they make an assessment like this. There's no way that this could be a complete evaluation to provide a meaningful assessment for our community. It just can't, based on what we've heard. So, you know, big no.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
If I could comment. And let me start by thanking our engineer, Rebecca Neves, for her excellent report on this. When I was with Cleve, when he opened the letter and we read what was going to happen, he and I started to make a list of things just from our exposure, from our level, that we knew were wrong with our existing street system, and how a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit would just make those conditions even worse, if not deadly. And Rebecca's engineering expertise made those, our observations, the accurate details that we need to oppose Caltrans. One of the things that it says in the Caltrans process is they will not consider emotional concerns of a community. So we didn't. As I said just a moment ago, we have an excellent engineering report that does not count on any emotion whatsoever. It lists in itself, and I think will be added additional information from the input we've had this afternoon, engineering reasons, real operational reasons why this is not stupid, this is insane. This is a danger to this community and the users of Highway 50. As I've listened this evening, it occurred to me what happened is this report failed to look inside the community that Highway 50 passes through and how the community street network works with the Highway 50 network. An engineer, I'd like to think an engineering student, but an engineer somewhere sat down and said, here are the numbers, here's my report, and they boilerplated it. And they sent it to us this evening, fully hoping that we wouldn't even have this meeting. I want to again thank all my colleagues and staff and the public for all of their time this evening and their expert comments. Listening to the superintendent of transportation from El Dorado High School and those great big yellow buses sitting at Canal Street waiting to turn right to go west, and now the cars are going to be going legally 50 but more than likely 60, 62 miles an hour up against a yellow school bus starting from zero. Is that a death trap or what? The other realities, and you've all heard it, the existing right-of-way, the facilities are inadequate. We do not have the deacceleration facilities to make left or right turn lanes. So if Caltrans wants to improve the speed limit, then they're going to need to improve Highway 50. So I'm a huge no. I think they need to come to the community and delve into the actual traffic patterns, and that includes their own Highway 49. This community was successful a few years ago. They actually got it put back to 25 miles an hour through the historic neighborhood over by B Street. Caltrans thought 35 would be more appropriate there. Absolutely not. Again, inadequate, old, residential neighborhood, huge amount of school traffic. So I'm confident that we will prevail. And again, I wanted to thank everybody for their hard work on this.
Thank you.
I'm just going to add my thanks too, and I do live on the north side of town. I can't believe Kathy Lishman has not seen an accident. Yeah. I have, oh my God, Bedford or Spring, but Bedford, I cannot tell you how many accidents I've seen, and it's just because they're westbound down that straight line that curves, and it's just unbelievable. I have to agree with the man who used stupid as a description. It's just unbelievable that this would have any thought. And you know what, like Rebecca was saying and Cleve, Caltrans had a book in front of him probably and said, oh, it's time to do this. So I think we're going to bring a lot of things to their attention, and hopefully they'll come to their senses and agree with us. But I would like to say, Rebecca, that you did mention that maybe we, I hate to say this, put more signs. That's what we need, is more signs. But warning people, and I agree with the sudden 65 to 40, there isn't a lot of notification. I remember Mrs. Hosea came before us several years ago and just begged, and she won. Then we got the 40 put printed right on the freeway, and I think that really helped a lot. But I think that we do need more warning signs, and they need to be before they get to the actual 40 mile an hour. So that's just my opinion, but I really think we should work on that and consider it. So thank you again.
Well, again, I want to thank everybody that came out tonight to express their opinion. I think it's overwhelming that people think this is a dumb idea for our city and for a highway that bisects our city to have an increase in speed without taking into any context everything else that goes around the north and south side of our city. As you can see, this is to be continued. This isn't ending today. I want to again express my disappointment for Caltrans not being here today. It's certainly a checklist that they have, and one that was a big check that they forgot to do. It was to actually have someone sitting here today to listen to the concerns of our residents and of City Council. And I just want to let the community know we will be continuing on this. We've had excellent work from Rebecca, from the chief. I want to thank our CHP for being here as well. Thank you very much for listening to the concerns of the residents in this area. And for everyone that sent in their responses as well. I know we've all been reading through them as well, staff as well as City Council. So for everyone that sent in a letter or an email that couldn't be here, we appreciate those comments as well. So we will continue to update you as this moves along, to be continued. This isn't the end of the fight here.
Mr.
And
Mayor?
again, oh yes.
Excuse me. Just one quick question for our city engineer. We've focused a lot on the lights, but I also have heard some really great concerns about the inadequacies and dangers of the existing mosquito ramp system and how it would be exacerbated with this proposal. Now, if we make sure that we also extend that level of concern up to and past Mosquito Road.
Absolutely, yeah. It's not new information for Caltrans to know that that's a substandard on-off ramp scenario. And so we will absolutely continue to kind of beat that drum.
Absolutely, and I think that goes hand in hand with the signage issue and the decelerization through that portion. And then Rebecca, if I can be of any help, if I can sit down and have a meeting with District 3, just name the place and time, and I'll be there too. So
I appreciate that, Mayor.
thank you. So again, thank you everyone for being here. We'll reconvene here. We usually start at 6. We'll give everybody like a 5-minute break, and then we'll start our regular session. Thank you.